Good evening, everybody. Good evening. It's 7 o'clock and we are live on the Dugout Football channel. We are live with the World of Football podcast. And I have to say, it has been a very interesting week of, action, hasn't it? But as you can see, we are a little bit short panel tonight. Josh is not here, and neither is Mr. George Kelb. Obviously, George is in London and Josh is having some, let's say, me time. So enjoy yourselves and we will see you next week. But the show must go on and we are joined by, as always, by Mr. Nathan Morgan. How you doing, Nathan?
I am doing very well, thank you, Doug. Bit ill, but I'm all right apart from that. Yeah, it's some absolute dribble for Cardiff City over the weekend. As usual, I will say this now, Drakeford out. Hope you're having a good one and thanks for having me on.
We're also joined by Mr. Reece Russell, as always. How you doing, Reece?
I'm all right, thanks. I finished work about 20 minutes ago, so I'm just waiting on the mixed in. I seen Nathan's away day vlog, and let's just say I was pissing myself.
Yeah, and we are delighted to be joined by a very, very special guest, and his team finally won the weekend. It is Mr. Des Oldham. Thank you very much for coming on and agreeing to be part of the podcast tonight. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Like you say, we've got that first win, so there's plenty to be optimistic about this week.
Absolutely indeed. Let's say hello to a few people because I have seen there have been a few people in here already. Jack, don't worry about that. I just got your message there. Hope you're doing okay. Good evening to Hella. Good evening to James. Good evening to Cian Dolan. Door on tour as well. Nice to see you in here as well. And Cian Dolan. Hussam, big up to you, my friend, and big up to Chris Welsh as well. But there is only one place to start. And actually, I should probably put that on. But it's all about Forest, and the reason why Mr. Des Oldham is with us. Forest beat Huddersfield 2-0 to have their first victory of the season. But it hasn't been a very good start to the season. Obviously, they have lost Chris Hughton as well. So, Des, what's going on at Nottingham Forest?
What's gone right? Where do I start? I just think with Chris Hughton personally that he never hit the ground running. You know, we did actually win the first game last season. We was in a similar predicament. We started the season really, really poorly after capitulating in the playoffs against Stoke the season before. You know, there was a major hangover. It seemed like the club was flat. Lots of players come in, lots of well-known Championship players, Harry Arter, you know, Cyrus Christie, players that probably, on reflection, Anthony Knockaert was another one, probably unsettled everything that was going on around them. You know, and whilst we was pleased to get them at the start of the season and thought, even after those few defeats last season, we'd push on, we'd get up the league with these proven players who got promotions under the belt. It just never happened. It never really happened for Hughton. We'd win one game, we'd lose the next three, we wouldn't win in seven. You know, all these ones where we couldn't get any consistency going. And then this season, it looked like we'd streamlined a little bit, let some players sort of go. You know, didn't rush into panic buys as it seemed to be last season. Everybody was expecting us to start afresh, and we just kind of carried on in the same vein. When you look at the Chris Hughton's record towards the end of last season, we didn't win for several games towards the end, and then starting this season with the form we had, 1 point from 7, this weren't good enough. And it ultimately, I've got a lot of issues with the club as well itself. But in terms of Hughton, he's the man to pick the team. He's the man to get the best. He said this. He was quite honest and open. I quite like Chris Hughton as a person. He was quite open and honest that he had to work with what he got. There's a couple of positions, particularly at fullback, where at the start of the season we were really, really short. But there just seemed to be no plan B. We was leading in a couple of games. We was well in a couple of games. But as soon as we went behind, that was it. The writing was on the wall. And then Saturday, probably playing the team in the best form so far this season, and we go and turn them over 2-0. which was a complete surprise to everybody. Kind of controlled the game. Slight change of formation, which we've been crying out for. Not necessarily, we didn't have a formation in mind, but you went 3-4-3. And it seemed to work with the three centre backs, and the 2 full backs sort of pushing on a little bit more, which we've been crying out for, people to push forward. Really sort of put us in a good position. Got the early goal, and then they had to come at us, and we finished the game off just after half time.
Yeah, it's been a very, very strange, couple of years for Forest. I mean, Nathan, you were at the City ground last week with obviously Cardiff City, and that was a very, very good game. I watched it. I think Forest did well. It was just that Cardiff came out in that second half and got the win. Anyway, I know there was obviously limbs in the away end, but what have you made of Forest this season?
To be honest, I was pretty disappointed, in particular from a Chris Hughton side as well. I thought coming into the new season, things would have settled down a bit. Hughton would have got used to the role as well, even though you have an absolute moron as his assistant manager. But I don't know, because normally, and looking at Hughton's side, when he's got into that role and he's had that year in and he's got in the squad that is right for him, and he's had that time, then he'll get the sides promoted. Every single side he's managed in the Championship has gone to the Premier League. Norwich City is one, Newcastle's another, Brighton is another, and all of them have had, pretty successful times there, minus Norwich, of course. But I had him for a high finishing position, especially going back the squad depth in that squad as well. Yes, ever since the likes of Asombalonga and those types of good strikers have left, there hasn't really been too much going forward. But I thought that that good defence and good midfield would carry you forward. But unfortunately, that hasn't happened. And it's just kind of sad that Chris Hughton ended up having this start of the season and is out the door already. But it's going to be a question, when will Forest ever stop sacking managers? And when will they find the manager that is Mr. Nottingham Forest? Yeah,
I have to say, Reece, Chris Hughton, obviously a very, very likeable bloke. He's he did well, at Newcastle, did well at Brighton. Obviously, got rid of them. I was really hoping it went well for him at Forest. He's that kind of manager you just hope it goes well for him, because he is a very, very likeable guy.
He would probably turn Norwich into a contender to actually stay in the Premier League, put it that way. I like Chris Hughton. There's something about him I've always admired. I think the one team that stood out for me in terms of how he handled himself, despite having the fact he had a shit owner, was Newcastle. I remember the fact he's the reason they got back in from relegation. He got them promoted, and with Andy Carroll as his main man, and he got things right there. But he was unfortunate to lose his job really early. It just didn't work out in the end. But I look at how things turned out at Nottingham Forest, and ever since they got relegated in the first Premier League season, Nottingham Forest have always been in that free fall. And obviously, Des will be able to talk about it a little bit more, because he's not to put a roast on the things, but he is older than me, so he would know full well in terms of Nottingham Forest from the 90s onwards. I've got more of a sense of like when I started watching them in the Championship, maybe 2006, 2007's first time I started watching them a bit more. So I don't have as much experience of understanding Nottingham Forest, but I love the history of the club. It's why I want them back in the top flight. I look at the teams that won. Me too. I look at the team that won the 79 and 1980 European Cup finals, like totally different ways. One of them was with Trevor Francis, the other one wasn't, because it was just purely brilliant how they'd done it under Brian Clough. And since then, it's just never been the same. And that's why I want these sort of teams to be back in the top flight, even the likes of Blackburn, like they have that history in the top flight. That's what you want. You don't want the shit heaps. You don't want the West Brom. You don't want the Norwich Cities anymore. You want
Swanseas.
Yeah, you want clubs with history in the top flight. And that's why I want the likes of Blackburn. That's why I want the likes of Nottingham Forest back in. But going back to the point of Chris Hughton in terms of his management, it's just unfortunate how the circumstance with Nottingham Forest, it hasn't worked out for him. The owners have, obviously Des will be able to talk about them in more context than I can, but the owners have just not given him the proper backing he deserves. I don't know what his budget's like in terms of transfers, so I know Nathan, as a Cardiff fan, their transfer budget is pish, but I don't know how to describe Nottingham Forest. But what I can say is, from what I've seen, it's never been right for him in terms of building a side on the long term. He's never had a chance to make it fluid, and it's awkward for him.
Yeah.
And sadly, he's lost his job, and it's a shame, really. But wherever he goes next, I hope he gets him back to the Premier League, and hopefully someday down the line, preferably before I'm 30, Nottingham Forest are in the Premier League. So you've got 6 years to get back to the Premier League.
I used to say that. I used to say before I'm 30.
Eventually, you'll be saying before you're 45.
Who do you want to take over at the City ground, Des?
It's an interesting question, that, because I've got this big issue with these Championship managers who go round in circles. You know, the Gary Rowett's, the Gary Monks, you know, Tony Pulis even now. You know, these managers go round and they do a good job here and there, and then they get recruited and they get fired again. You know, and I think that's kind of what the way Forest saw Chris Hughton. I think the bigger problem lies, and this is what I was kind of getting to before, and what some of the guys have spoke about, and I can see in the comments, is the owners and the fact that they keep firing managers. So whoever they're going to get, there's a possibility of that happening. For me personally, I want somebody in the club who's going to rattle a few cages, who's going to throw a few teacups, because it seems to be in the last, since Billy Davis was in charge, and we all know about Billy Davis. Since Billy Davis was in charge, the club's just too. It's just getting passed by. Everything's getting passed by. It's too nice. It's too. You know, the manager's kind of getting taken advantage of. He's not got enough say in what goes on. You know, these chairmen they employ people around the club who are making decisions that perhaps don't fit with the manager's ideas. You know, the signings, there's not been a lack of funding under the ownership of Marinakis. There never has been. They've signed lots of players. We've signed lots of players that have never even played for the club or barely played for the club. You know, so it just seems like there's something wrong going on. It's okay, a transfer panel signing players from abroad and bringing them in, and then Hughton going, I'm not going to play them, or Lamucci going, I'm not going to play them because they're not good enough. So that doesn't work. There seem to be too many chefs, you know, is what they say, isn't it? And it's just not working. There's no sort of clear definition of who's in charge, who's making the decisions. They've employed a guy this year. They've taken him from Barnsley called Dave Murphy, who's got a big reputation. He's the CEO, who's done really well at Barnsley. He's turned them from relegation fodder into sort of playoff candidates. So everyone's quite excited about that. But at the end of the day, the guy's got to be left to do his job as well. And there's been a lot of interference. You know, we had a chief executive last year called Ventros. Don't know if you've heard of the guy, but he fell out with Karanka. You know, Karanka ended up leaving almost with mental health issues. You know, because they didn't get on. You know, and then we've had him and other guys working on signings when Lamucci were there, and them players kind of. When Lamucci were there, before we lost that big playoff game, we had a run before that where we were struggling to stay in the playoffs, but we'd signed players in January that just weren't good enough. Really destabilised that team. You know, when they come in, and some of them was on big wages. There was a player called Dear Carby from Huddersfield who'd been in the Premier League, and he was playing a few games, and we knew we were rubbish. And it really destabilised everything. And from that point, it feels like nobody quite knows in the club who's doing what and whose responsibility it is. We're all pinning our hopes on Dane Murphy being the man to get the right manager. It looks like Steve Cooper at the moment. Going back to your initial question, I'd like somebody. I took a bit of criticism on Mr. Dawes' show a couple of days ago about this. I'd like Neil Warnock. I hate Neil Warnock.
Neil Warnock.
I hate him with a passion.
He'd be good at Forest.
But I feel like he's always fancied the Forest job. He was the Nottingham County manager years ago, and he admired Brian Clough, which is interesting. We speak about him today because it's 17 years ago today he died. So that's a big point for Forest today. But he really admired Clough, and he's always fancied the Forest job. But like he did at Cardiff, like he's done at Middlesbrough, he's just gone in there and tidied it up. He goes back to basics. You know, we know what type of teams he plays. They're nasty, they're big, they're strong, they're physical. And like I touched on there about over the last few years, Forest have been a soft touch in many aspects of the game. You know, whether it's the actual football or the back room or being pushed around with transfers and things. And I just think we need somebody who's going to sort of stick up for Forest a little bit. You know, remind everybody we're a big club. I don't want to be arrogant and say this is where we should be. You know, because we have been out the Premier League for 20 years, but we are a big club, and it seems like we've lost that winning mentality. We lost it a long time ago, to be fair, but we've got a losing mentality. So we've not even got this, like Barnsley, we can have a go, you know, or Cardiff, we'll have a go and do our best. At Forest, we always lose. You know, everyone's down about the situation. Everyone's down. So I want somebody like a Warnock, and I'm not a massive Chris Wilder fan, but the more I hear he wants the job, because he did say on 5 Live, he wanted the job. You know, someone like that who's going to kind of go in there and stand up to the club, stand up to everybody criticising the club and say, we're going to take it forward. So that's my choice. Realistically, it's going to be Steve Cooper.
Would you consider maybe, I don't know, I don't think he's still in a job now, so it actually is quite good for you guys. Would you consider Eddie Howe as a manager personally?
I would, yeah, absolutely, because he plays an attractive brand. You know, he might sort of get us play into some of the players' strengths. I think of the likes of Joe Lolly and Lewis Grabban, who've probably been a little bit stifled under the defensive tactics of Chris Hughton, you know, and a little bit sort of held back. So if we had an Eddie Howe, again, I think that would be a good move, but I don't think he'd come.
The only thing is that difficulty. I was just thinking like outside the box, like something that could work for someone who's already familiar with the league and he does play good football. Would have been Eddie Howe, but I'm trying to think. The only things you would command is he would want a certain. He's worked with limited budgets before, but I think he would want something from Forest. It's just they would obviously not the budget in sense, but he would want some sort of guarantees about how long he's going to get time wise and all that crap, which. Unfortunately, not in Forest recently. You're not going to get the time, and it's a shame, really, because that's what you need—the manager stability, which is what James said in the comments.
That's the key thing: time. Give a guy time. You know, Eddie Howe, he wasn't an instant success, but they had a project going. You know, and even Chris Hughton at Brighton, at Newcastle and Birmingham, he kind of inherited decent squads, but at Brighton, it was a project that he had a little bit of time to work with. And any of the most successful managers these days, you look at Sean Dyche, who bizarrely, even though
9 months next year, 9 years next month, sorry, for Burnley.
Amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Bizarrely, he's never far away from being mentioned about the Forest job, because even though he's doing well at Burnley, there's always a hint because he was a youngster at Forest. You look at someone like that, and you look at Eddie Howe at Bournemouth and those type of guys. And when Pochettino was at Southampton, you know, they had a bit of time to build squads and do something really special. And it just proves that you give the manager time. Jurgen Klopp, to some extent, you know, he didn't.
Look at the squad he inherited.
Oh, it was a shout of shite.
It was awful. Absolutely awful. I mean, I'm a big Liverpool fan, and I can tell you like his potential like top first 11. It had Mignolet, had like a Moreno, Sacco,
Klein.
I think Skrtel played. I think Mankiw maybe played as well. It was just awful, absolutely awful. So I get where you're coming from, and I think a bit of stability would definitely help. Nottingham Forest, but I've just got this up because some of the names here that have actually been at Forest under these sort of owners is quite staggering. Mark Warburton's been there. Gary Brazil's had about 3 spells from March 2014 and then back in January 2017 and then 31st of December 2017. Aitor Karanka, Martin O'Neill, which I thought was going to. I actually thought Martin O'Neill would have worked. Obviously, him and Roy Keane, but it just didn't. It just didn't happen. Obviously, Sabio Lamucci as well, Chris Hughton as well. Oh yeah, and Alex McLeish. I remember that spell. That wasn't a very good spell as well. So we're just. I think you just hope that you can get a manager, someone who can come in, maybe just improve the playing style, and then just get you guys firing again. Because the one thing we have been missing in the last 20 years is a Nottingham Forest in the Premier League. And myself and Reece will tell you that we definitely want Forest back. We definitely want you back.
Well, I definitely do.
Absolutely, it's a real special place when it's full and when it's noisy, and when we play derby or a big game where we've been in the playoffs. I've been lucky enough to take people along, introduce them almost to football, or introduce them to Forest at least, and who support other teams, and they've said this place is incredible when it's full. When it's loud, there's a bit of an eyesore with the main stand, and the look of the ground is getting a bit tired, but as you come across the river, and then obviously the Mullock and Ties song and all these things, it creates a fantastic atmosphere being that old type of stadium. And all the journalists, we beat Arsenal a few years in the FA Cup, a real sort of special.
Oh, that was a wonderful game of football, that one.
And all the top journalists sort of begging for Forest to be back in the Premier League, and it actually boils down to that point we made about stability. You mentioned Martin O'Neill. Interestingly, out of all those managers, he lasted the shortest. He had the best win rate, but there was a real sort of clamour around the club to get rid of him from the younger fans because they said he was a dinosaur. But the reality is, he was one of the guys who apparently stood up to the owners because he's got a bit of respect in these parts. He's got Now he won the European Cup. I've heard times that he'd stand up to the owners, and that's ultimately what cost him his job. That everyone called him a dinosaur, and he got players running up a local park, up a hill, and they used that as the excuse. But we hear all these things, and nothing's ever sort of clear on what's happening, and that's the problem. It's just boils down to that stability issue.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see what some of you guys are saying in the chat, because I have been kind of alienating the chat, so I do apologise as well. Kean Dolan has said Nottingham Forest, the Watford of the Championship.
Too good to be in the league.
Yeah. Nottingham Forest are sleeping giant in the Championship. 100% agree. God, give us back Nottingham Forest and Blackburn. We'll give you Burnley and Norwich. Oh yes, please. I would definitely say that.
I agree.
Chris Welsh, I think you've had a chat about Des on Steve Cooper. Is that someone who you would want?
I don't know. When I first heard his name mentioned, I don't know the history with Swansea too well. I consider myself a bit of a stato and a know-it-all, and I know what the results were. I know what he did. I don't know much about why he left.
Falling out with the owners.
Pardon?
And he fell out with the owners, and not only that as well, it's sort of the same thing that you alluded to with Forest with the younger fans, who I like to address them as football hipsters, really, who hated the style of play and ended up forcing him out of the club, and so he resigned, and also issues with the transfer budget. So personally, for me, it's sort of a similar situation with Forest. I think if he goes in, he'll sort the club out. Well, he'll sort the team out and get them playing and sort the academy out, but he will have a bust up with the owners and he'll be gone after a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of what I heard. I know of a Swansea fan I talked to, and he knows a bit living in that area. But when I heard, when I've seen Forest play them, they've looked really well drilled. That's the first thing that comes to mind. They didn't concede. I think we played them 3 times last year. Played them in the FA Cup. They beat us 5-0, and they put a lot of young players in. We'd made changes that day, but what I did realise when I started thinking about Steve Cooper was he had a lot of attacking flair as well. With Jordan Ayew, Andre Ayew, isn't it?
They both suck anyway.
Andre, yeah, they're both overrated.
But in terms of coming out of the Premier League into the Championship, he had Ayew, he had Brewster, he had Dan James for a season. So I can understand why the fans might have been frustrated if we went defensive. So I'm kind of split. If it was 2-3 weeks ago, I'd have been, oh yeah, it sounds like a good appointment. But the more I hear from people who know what he's done, kind of like, it sounds a bit like what we've had with Chris Hughton and perhaps Sabri Lamucci before. One of my biggest issues I never wanted Chris Hughton, and one of my biggest issues with that is CV's was immaculate. His CV's fantastic, but the reason I didn't want him is because it felt like we was going for exactly the same type as Lamouchi, and it always felt that the issues would be beyond Lamouchi. So we was having one guy getting really criticised for being defensive and negative, who for me overachieved massively, going into another guy who plays the same way and expecting to change it. And that's my worry going into, if we get like a Cooper, for example. I do think he'll do a decent enough job, but my worry is, do we get that initial sort of stabilisation and then just revert back to what we've had for the last 2 seasons?
I'm not sure if he's still managing, but maybe take a punt on Sam Allardyce. I know it sounds bad because I bash the dinosaurs a lot on here. Like I would honestly drop an asteroid strike on them. I've said it numerous times, but I just look at it and I think, look at like what he's done for several teams in the Championship before. I look at what he's done with like West Ham as an example, where he got them back instantly. It's like he built that team really well around certain youngsters and experienced players. I look at the Forest side and I think that might actually be a good thing as well, because it's something he's done before. He could end up getting Nottingham Forest promoted. It's not going to be the easiest thing in the world, because obviously he's got to contend with the other teams in the Championship. But I think about it, and I think Nottingham Forest and Sam Allardyce makes a lot more sense than getting somebody else who's just in and around the league, like Steve Cooper. I think, that's good for building the club, but Nathan said for a year after that, boom, he's gone, because he just has an absolute bitch fit. Yeah. But Allardyce, you already know that. But the one thing Allardyce does, Allardyce commands authority. And he has that respect as well from even fans like myself. Like, I rip him to pieces, but I still respect him for what he's done in the game. And I think that makes a lot of sense, because Allardyce has never been one for a big budget anyway. We all agreed on this when he got West Brom relegated. He was never backed in the first place, and we saw what was coming.
Number one mistake when employing Sam Allardyce.
Exactly.
At any job.
They should have backed him, and I think he would get backed adequately. He would get used playing good football to an extent, but he would also get used immediately solid. And I think that is what you guys lack as well, is you didn't have that solidity at the back. Get that going with Sam Allardyce. And I just think you could go from where you sit in the league right now?
Bottom.
Well, that's unfortunate. You go from bottom. I'd say within 6 months, you would go from bottom to at least 12th. I reckon you would climb at least 8 positions in 6 months under Sam Allardyce.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why I said Warnock and Wilder. I'm not a fan of I'm not a fan of Allardyce like yourself, but right now, I would take that type of manager. My biggest worry about that is, that won't happen, because they'll have too much to say in and around the club, and they've got enough respect in football and enough about them. That they've got a bigger personality than Hughton. Whilst he's a nice guy and he gets a lot of respect, they'll just come out with it. If Warnock don't get what he wants, or Wilder or Allardyce, or if they mess him about, they will say it and they'll get backed by the media. And I think Forest, and the same with Eddie Howe to some degree as well. Forest are absolutely petrified to employ that type of manager. So I said on another channel, either that type, Allardyce, Warnock, Wilder, I got a lot of criticism for that, or an up-and-coming manager. Somebody out of League One, League Two. Chris Wilder was he was a Sheffield United fan, but they took him from Northampton or Oxford, one or the other. He worked at them both and worked well, and then they took him. But Forest won't do that, because they'll see that, we need a Cooper or a Newton just to stabilise the ship, because the last thing these owners can do is get us relegated. But what they don't also want to do is have another problem in terms of an authoritative, outspoken manager on their hands as well. Do you see what I mean?
Here's an interesting question. Kane Dolan has asked, would Des take someone like Steven Gerrard? He's the only young manager I can think of right now, but would you take someone like him in a similar position?
Very interesting.
It is an interesting question, and we had a big debate because I threw a name out there, and he was linked with the job. John Terry was linked with the job. And I said, I possibly would. Again, I do like some people, but
Neil Lennon's still jobless.
In terms of his personality and what he does, but he's a winner. He's like these guys, Gerrard, Lampard, Rooney. Terry, as I mentioned, they're all winners, aren't they? They're all people, and they've got contacts within the game. So as much as I don't want it to be about cronyism and all these things, which I feel is a big problem at Forest. They've got contacts. When we need those players to really make the difference, look at Lampard at Derby. He took in Mason Mount and Tomori. And he nearly got them through the playoffs. They come up against a lead side that should have got promoted 2 or 3 years ago. And Aston Villa as well, who are absolutely flying now. So they actually beat Leeds, didn't they? But so potentially it will take someone like that. But again, I think they've got too much about them.
Yeah.
For the Forest board and ownership to take that kind of risk in terms of if they get it wrong, everybody goes to the board. If Steve Cooper gets it wrong, or Gary Monk or whoever, who floats around, Chris Hughton, the manager gets it. They become an easy target.
That's fair. I think that sums up. I think that sums up entirely with most jobs is who gets certain blame if they don't have that sort of respect in football. They get the blame. If it's a player that has that, if it's a player who then became a manager has that respect, it's above them that gets it. So I completely agree. I thought an up-and-coming type manager was actually a very smart thing as well. And I think, considering how bad it went at Chelsea, I think this is actually a perfect rebound for Frank Lampard. Not in the sense of disrespect to Nottingham Forest, no disrespect in that way. But I think it's a perfect rebound for him because obviously how bad it went with that transfer window and the results went completely downhill. He went to Forest. He could use those connections at Chelsea, maybe bring in a couple of those young players that he could give them that chance to revitalise their career or give them the opportunity to then go to Chelsea the following year.
Yeah,
he could look at that and maybe collect. But like you said, it's all about the fact is, the Forest board have the balls to actually do it? And judging from yourself, Des, you've been consistent for the past 32 minutes, the whole way through this conversation. They don't have the balls to do it, and that's the unfortunate side of it. And if you don't have the balls to take a chance, then you're going to be stuck where you are. And look at some clubs now where Blackburn have been stuck in the Championship for years. Cardiff have been stuck in the Premier League. Exactly, Cardiff have been stuck for years as well, and it's because they just don't have the balls to make these decisions. And it's shit, really. It's shit because you want these clubs back. You want these clubs in the top level over certain clubs like Burnley and Norwich who don't belong there.
Absolutely.
What really worries me is we get these managers, these run-of-the-mill managers, and we've started doing this thing. I noticed it a few years ago watching Aston Villa in the Premier League before they were relegated, Sunderland in the Premier League and in the Championship. If you flirt with relegation for too long, you will go. You'll survive the first season, maybe. You might survive the second, but the more you hang around, the more likely it is to happen. And it seems to be the case now that that's starting to happen with Forest. We had one good season under Lamucci, but Mark Warburton came in and kept us up, doing a reasonable job, but not pulling up any trees, gets let go. Karanka sort of took us up there and got sacked in 7th because his remit was on New Year's Day to be in the playoffs. And on New Year's Day, he was in 7th. And the issues with the ownership. But then since Lamucci and that massive fall from sort of where we were, we beat Leeds 2-0. I'm sure you might remember it. We beat Leeds 2-0. And we was
I watched it. You were fantastic that day.
We had games in hand. We were 2 points behind. We were getting promoted. We was sorting out all the trips to where we're going to go. And then we played Charlton on the Tuesday night. And I think a little bit of arrogance on our part, we put it out a weakened team and got beat. But since then, it's just been back. And like I said, you flirt with relegation long enough, it's going to happen eventually.
Because we all remember Wigan when they beat Man City in the FA Cup final. They'd been flirting with relegation for years, and eventually they got the drop. But at least they went out with a cup win, which is absolutely glorious. Sunderland as well. They were sacking managers left, right, and centre, but still beating Newcastle 4-0 at St James's Park, and eventually they went straight down. So it's like I said, if you start with that, eventually you get unstuck, and then they seem
to be a bit of a they seem to be a bit stable in League One, but obviously
that's their landscape now. That's where they're staying.
I think so. Guys, we are 34 minutes in. Please hit that like button and please hit that subscribe button. It's been very, very very interesting to get Dez's insights into all things Nottingham Forest. But we do have to move on, and my goodness me.
Oh no.
Well. Derby County are facing get this, a 21 point deduction.
Shocking,
Was it 24?
24 because of the free suspended that they had from a few years ago.
Oh
it's absolute shiting. All I'm going to say is
24 points deduction, and they have called in the administrators. Honestly, I mean, Des, obviously, I know Derby are like your biggest rivals. I know that obviously Leicester City can be, big rivals as well. But what is your reaction to what's happened at Derby?
To be honest, it's shocking. Obviously, it's absolutely shocking, and what's been allowed to happen should never happen. From a personal point of view, we was in not as bad a position, absolutely nowhere near. They gave us a lot of stick. We had a shocking owner who was taking us one way. And there was no relenting. They were trying to sign Mikel Antonio offers.
Yeah.
There was cheeky bids to try and get all our players. There was no sympathy. So in many ways, I've got no sympathy, but in many ways, I've got no opinion either. I hear a lot of Forest fans talking at the moment saying, be careful what you wish for because Derby are so bad. I don't think that makes Forest any better. Derby is so bad. Nobody's ever been in that position.
Yeah.
There's been teams really, really struggling, but I don't know anyone who they've spoke about with 24-point deduction. And of course, for us here locally, it's a big game. We need that. That sometimes it's that game that keeps us. We tend to play them in March, and normally both teams' season's over because we're both rubbish, and that's the game that we kind of hang on for. And once that game's out of the way, it's almost like preparing for the summer holidays and thinking what we can do next season. So we do, to some degree, we need them in the league.
Yeah.
Much sympathy for them? Not really. I absolutely have if I'm being realistic, but it doesn't bother me a great deal. That what the owner's done there is absolutely incredible. The more you hear, there was an interview on Radio Derby which a lot of Forest fans have shared. He was on Mel Morris was on there yesterday, and he were blaming COVID, and he were blaming. He was saying
really not COVID.
League One teams haven't got as big a budget as Derby, and it was just like, what are you talking about? This guy's worth 500 million. He's worth £500 million. And so he's obviously a good businessman. He's just used it. He's used it as a plaything. Someone once said to me a long, long time ago, because we had Nigel Doughty as an owner who was a massive Forest fan. Good businessmen make bad chairmen. Bad businessmen make good chairmen because they just throw lots of money at it. I think of Peter Isdale at Leeds, just throwing money.
We all know where that got them.
Yeah.
That was another one, wasn't it? They went at a purple patch with undermanned.
From FA Cup winners to League One candidates. That's what they are now.
Yeah, I mean,
business as well.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the table. So if the 24-point deduction does go ahead, Derby will be minus 14. So that would be.
We've seen this before in our own league. We've seen it to Gretna. We've seen it to Hearts.
Yeah,
I'm not going to mention another team because people will laugh. And frankly, I already tell you we won the league last year, so fuck the lot of yous. But it's horrible to see this sort of thing in football. Even Bury as well. Like there's some clubs like in these sort of circumstances. I can understand if it was Celtic, I'd be laughing all day long, right? Because it happened in the 90s. If it happened today, I would be pissing myself. If it was Liverpool, I'd be celebrating. Just saying, right? But it's horrible when it's a club like. And it's been a familiar club for years in a certain level where they had years where they were in the playoffs like back to back. And next thing you know, they're now in a situation where they're having to call in administrators because they're in shit creek. It just shows how bad the ownership is. And that's another thing in football. Like these certain owners who have clearly got money, but they genuinely, I'm going to put it in the nice way possible, can't be fucked. with the club. They're just milking it, and they've ruined their fan base. I know, like, Nottingham Forest fans are going to be happy with this because it's like, well, you done it to us in terms of, like, you mocked us to pieces. We're just going to sit and enjoy it, and rightfully so. But for Derby fans, like, I don't know how they're going to comprehend this as well. Like, me as a Man United fan, obviously, club legend is their manager. And I'm having to see him watch Wayne Rooney suffer, and I'm like, it's horrible for him having to go through this as a manager. Don't know how he's going to cope. But with Derby itself, they should not be in this situation, especially with an owner who's worth £500 million. He should be doing more. And he's clear. Yeah. He is basically the championship equivalent of that twat that owns Newcastle, Mike Ashley.
Yeah, as Chris Will says, Mel Morris needs to take responsibility, acting like a smart arse. Yeah, look, I think Wayne Rooney's obviously going to stay on at Derby, but Nathan, you've got a little bit of you've been actually doing your research on Derby, and you've got a wee rant to say why they're in this predicament.
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, where on earth do we start? I mean, it all started in 2016. Right, let's start from the top. They've breached FFP rules so many times, overspending on transfer budget, wages, the lot, between 2016 and 19. They spent a total of £76 million on signings, which is a disgrace for the Championship, and some shocking wages there as well, especially on loan signings and quite a few other former Premier League players going to the club. Then we had the whole Nigel Pearson incident, when Nigel Pearson accused Mel Morris himself of spying on his training sessions using drones to try and get rid of him. That obviously led to his sacking when he got accused. Sort of a mini Spygate there from when Leeds spied on Derby, but this time Derby spying themselves. Then we had what I like to call Snowgate. When we were going to play, if any of you remember this, we were going to play Derby up at Pride Park. They had so many injuries, sorry, that they ended up cancelling the game and blaming it on the snow when there was literally no snow on the ground. Warnock went absolutely furious and literally said it was absolutely fine considering that Cardiff had trained in the local park the day before. For Warnock to make a statement, they should have had a 3-0 forfeit, or we should have received a 3-0 forfeit. EFL ignored it, replayed the game where they won 3-1, which was a month and a half later. Oh my gosh. Which was a month and a half later when their whole squad was back. Then after this, we had the Pride Park incident when Mel Morris sold the ground to himself for £80 million to comply with FFP in 2019. And then he also lied when submitting the accounts for it, when obviously you have to yearly submit your accounts to the EFL. Disgrace. Then you had the Wayne Rooney incident. When they signed Wayne Rooney, they went through 32 Red, their sponsor, gave him the number 32 shirt for obvious reasons because 32 Red were funding it. They were going to pay his wages and the transfer budget and the compensation fees to DC United just to comply with FFP regulations because it would have absolutely blown FFP and they would have got a massive fine. Then after that, they've also filed incorrect accounts required by the EFL many, many times. This ended up in court, and then they basically handed a slap on the wrist. EFL told them to rewrite all their accounts for the last 3 years, which highlighted the amount that they'd overspent by, which handed them the first 12-point deduction, which is about to go on. Yeah. Then we had the Richard Keogh incident with all the drink driving and all that with the other two players. They sacked him straight away, even though he wasn't the person driving, whereas the other one, Tom Lawrence, I think it was someone else. They were the ones who were actually driving the vehicle and were handed a slap on the wrist. EFL didn't get involved at all with that, even though there isn't many grounds that they can do this for. Then they failed to play their players prior to this season as well. I think this has happened numerous times. Automatically for that, they got given a 3-point suspended points deduction.
I think it was 4 times last season.
Yes,
I think it was 4.
3 or 4 times last season, and it was before this season as well. So they got given a 3-point suspended. And now they're just about to enter administration, which on top of that is another 12-point deduction. So that's 24 points there, which is absolutely astronomical. And I think I've got to add something in there as well. What is it? There's another reason that I'll think of in a minute. But yeah, absolute disgraceful ownership, as you just summed there. mental.
The cost for hiring and sacking managers as well for them was astronomical, considering the managers they went through. And obviously the loan deals from Chelsea were expensive in terms of the amount of wages they had to pay for like Mount, Tomori and Abraham. That didn't help either.
No, considering they spent £76 million on transfers, which if you work that out, that's about 15 million per season. No club brings in that. In the Championship.
They were very. There was a comment actually here by James Dunlop that said Derby stayed up by the skin of their teeth last season. They were very fortunate to stay in the league. Had it not been for obviously Sheffield Wednesday's financial troubles, we might have seen Derby in League One. So
not only that as well, Doug. Sorry to interrupt.
That's right.
If also the EFL had arranged contingency plans for if they were going to hand Derby a points deduction, which would have kept Wycombe in the Championship, and they had interchanging fixtures for each club just in case it had to change. And they weren't able to do it in time because it was still in the courts and everything. But if the EFL would have done it swiftly, like they did to Sheffield Wednesday, like they'd done to Reading and us for transfer embargoes and stuff, then Derby would be in League One right now and still in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. Reece, obviously I put Derby County, obviously a doomed question mark, but minus 14. Do you think they could come back from that?
Not a chance, mate. Like I look at the teams above them in the league already. Even like points wise, minus 14, they're not going to catch anybody in the league unless they went on some sort of bizarre run and Wayne Rooney got them playing like the best football Nottingham Forest I've played since 1980. Yeah. Then it's not going to happen. I don't see that sort of respect. Like it's going to be difficult for Derby itself in terms of how they're going to recuperate. And in all fairness to Wayne Rooney, this is what I said last season, where I didn't want him to get sacked. I wanted him to be given time as the manager because he was in such a difficult position. I went to him, I don't know how he's going to cope with the job if it gets worse. And that was literally 4 or 5 months ago. And it's fast forward 4 or 5 months. And I'm spot on because of what's happened is in terms of the situation. How he's going to cope with this, I don't know. Yeah. How they're going to cope with the situation financially, I don't know. And I just consider the fact that already in terms of the points between them in the league already, once they go down to minus 14, they could claw back 14 points if they want and go back to 0. But by the time that happens, the teams will already be about 20, 30 points ahead of them. Even the teams already in the bottom, like the bottom 3, bottom 4, they're not catching that at all. And hate to say it to Derby, but consider yourself lucky you're getting relegated right now in September rather than getting relegated on the final day. Consider that it a blessing right now. You can just prepare for whatever's going to happen. You can just prepare smartly. But we already know because of where they are right now, they're not going to be preparing smartly. They're going to probably prepare for Wayne Rooney's unfortunate dismissal, and it's a shame, really.
Absolutely. Yeah. And another thing, I've got 2 things to add to that as well. One, if this was a Premier League club, I really don't think the punishments would even be in this level, minus the administration. Because in the Premier League, FFP breaches are a slap on the wrist. In the Championship, you get punished hard. And not only that as well, I do feel sorry for Derby fans who obviously their club's going to be in League One next season, especially when they had their hopes up the last few years. But you've got to really feel for the Bury fans and Macclesfield fans who were in the EFL a few years ago and now don't have clubs to support.
Yeah, they truly screwed them over because they didn't help. They didn't help, and they gave certain clubs extra chances, second, third, fourth, fifth chances. They gave them all these chances, and they still couldn't fix it. And that for me says, why do certain clubs get certain privileges, certain chances when other clubs were from day dot, like, as soon as they entered these sort of situations like administration or eventual liquidation, it was one chance, boom. The EFL didn't help, and that's what I hate about the football pyramid is the corruption from certain areas. Like, we already know the English FA is corrupt, and the Premier League has areas of levels of corruption. But from the Championship down, there's complete corruption there, and it's horrible. I'm blessed being a Man United fan. The only psychoticness I got to deal with is the ownership, and I'm not even going to discuss them tonight. But at least I only have to look at that. But I don't have to worry about financial factors to a degree because we only have that £2 billion debt, but we can work around that. But it's clubs below us who don't have the money to generate such revenues, and they can't come back from that, and it's horrible. And it's horrible.
The thing I will add on to that as well is that if we had the same rules for across the pyramid, including the Premier League, then Fulham would have had transfer embargoes and probably a points deduction for overspending numerous times. Villa would be there as well. I can name a few others. I think Swansea would be on there too.
Norwich would be, I think.
Norwich, no, I don't know. They don't really spend. But yeah, there's and Newcastle, massive one. £80 million and they got relegated. Says it all.
That was beautiful.
Des, is the writing on the wall for Derby, do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting listening to the guys here. Do you know, locally, and being a Forest fan, and when we were going through this game, this period where we were getting beat every game, you know, we were looking at Derby, and as much as we don't like Wayne Rooney, of course, we don't like Derby, we don't like anything sort of good about them. The one thing they seemed to do was come together. You know, the players, you know, everything else around the club is obviously a mess, but the fans and the players have kind of all rallied in, and the players are playing for Wayne Rooney. This was one of the big arguments we was using against Chris Hughton. You know, that the players are playing for him. You know, whatever mess they're in, and the fact he's deciding to stick there, he can, of course, he's comfortable in life. You know, he doesn't need to worry about his wages or whatever. He's in a no-lose situation, if you ask me. You know, but what from a Forest fan's point of view, we were really envious of the fact that they all did seem to rally around. So whilst 14 points is too much to come back from now, you know, I think they'll give it a go. You know, they'll fight for the manager. He's gone and got some of his mates in, which in a good way, he's got sort of Jagielka at the back, who's playing with Davis again. They're putting a shift in. They're not as good as they used to be. You know, of course, I don't think they'd get relegated if they didn't have the points deduction. They were always going to struggle. But what happens with these teams, if you look back to the Sheffield Wednesday situation last year, I was having this conversation with someone then, is they tend to get that siege mentality. They win 2 or 3 games at the start. Sheffield Wednesday got 8 points before Forest got 1 last season. So all of a sudden, there was 1 point behind. But what happens is as soon as they lose that first game, isn't it? You know, or they lose 1 or 2. As soon as that one finishes, because it always does, then those teams just above them have got 2, 3, 4 points, and they just keep moving away all the time. So it's that case of always playing catch up. You know, and it's just too much in the end. When these teams get these deductions, I think the only real success story was Leeds in League One. You know, Forest actually got promoted from League One in 2000 and however long ago it was, 2008.
Yeah.
2008, and I think we wouldn't have if Leeds had not had their points taken off.
Yeah. I'm just looking at the league now.
Team finishing the top half.
Yeah. I'm just looking at the league right now, and it's quite interesting how close the points are. So they're currently sitting in 12th at the minute until they get their points deduction. So they're sitting in 12th on 10 points. Luton Town and Reading are below them just because of goal difference. Yeah. But the bottom 4 teams in the league, Swansea, Nathan can laugh, they're in 21st. Peterborough in 22nd, Hull in 23rd, and Forest are currently at the bottom with 4. But it's only 3 points between Forest and Swansea. So if they go down to minus 14, they only need to win. If they win 5 games on the bounce, they'll get back up to 0. There's no guarantee. There's a potential guarantee, but there's no guarantee Forest are going to go 5 wins on the bounce. But they could potentially build a gap where they could try and close in the likes of Forest, Hull, and maybe Peterborough, depending on where the league is. Yeah. So they could turn it around. But I'm looking in terms of where the league is right now, from Reading, who are 14th, to Forest, it's only 6 points. It's only 6 points at the minute, so it's not too bad in terms of positions. Yeah. So they could turn around, but I think it's highly unlikely considering the squad that Wayne Rooney's got to deal with, and the fact that it's just the sheer circumstances come across him where it's not easy. But 2 wins, 4 draws, and 2 defeats already, and it's not too bad.
Well, in the Championship, because I've looked at the Championship and playoffs for a long time now and trying to get there. Yeah, you basically need 74 points. It just seems to be the line to get in the playoffs. So they always talk about 50 points. It's not quite normally that high. It's normally a little bit lower. But you think 50 points to stay safe, you think they've got to have playoff form over a season to almost hit that 50-point marker. And Derby aren't that good. They're doing well considering the position. They're picking up wins when you don't expect them to. They're getting beat at home when you think they might win. Too inconsistent. So ultimately, over a long season, and as the problem gets worse, they're just gonna fade away.
Yeah, they're gonna need the season from hell once they get into it. They're just gonna have to absolutely floor it, and if they manage it, then fair play them. But that's not going to be easy.
Chris Welsh saying, I remember my local town, Carlisle, being in League One for many years, including 2008 when Nottingham Forest got promoted. We've now been in League Two for 8 years now. Yeah, like I think Carlisle have actually started the season very, very well. So hopefully, for Chris's sake, that they get up. But yeah, I think it's going to be a big ask for Derby, but we have seen in the past that teams who have been in administration have come back from this. So who's to say that they won't? But we do have to move on. If you are enjoying the stream, then please remember to hit that like button and hit that subscribe button as well. So we move on to the Premier League roundup. City drop points. Well, this didn't work out very well, did it? Oh, I forgot it. I've still got it. This didn't work out very well.
Yeah.
Did it? Reece, City, you predicted it. You said a 1-1 draw.
I did.
How surprised were you how poor Manchester City were? One shot on target against the Southampton side, who, let's be honest, had been conceding goals left, right, and centre, but I actually thought they played really, really well, and a couple of times they almost got in the ball in the back of the net.
I want my apologies for everyone saying Southampton were getting relegated. Like, I told you Southampton wouldn't get relegated. I told you they would actually showcase the league what they're capable of if they just give Hasenhüttl time. And I look at Man City and I saw it coming because Man City they've just not convinced me this season. I know they've won games and they've goals-wise, it's typical of them to score goals, but the evidence is in the pudding. Like, in terms of like their performances, they've not been great. Yeah, they had an amazing midweek game where they battered Leipzig 6-3, but half the players they played in that game weren't convincing. And I look at the game against Southampton, and I think that's 2 years in the bounce now, where they've went to Southampton and they haven't beat them. I think Southampton beat them last year. I think they beat them 1-0 in a very dogged performance. They've drew 0-0. And they drew 0-0 this time around. Southampton literally know how to deal with teams like Pep Guardiola's Man City, because Hasenhüttl gets them well drilled. He gets them on the counter-attack when necessary, but when they have the ball, they're very effective with it. They were a bit unlucky where they had the penalty taken off them. The red card, like Kyle Walker, was rescinded. Fantastic comment. That was rescinded, and then, but even without that, Man City did nothing the whole game. Like, I look at the lineup, and they should be smashing Southampton 4-5-6-0. But when they played them, they played like Brighton with no striker. Like, well, actually, to be fair, they had no striker anyway. So it was basically watching Brighton with a bigger squad. I
am going to ask you both this about. I'm actually going to ask you all. Des, I don't know. Do you watch Premier League?
Yeah, definitely.
The red card given to Kyle Walker that was obviously rescinded, was it the right decision? I'll go around the room. So, Des, I'll come to you first. Was that the right decision to rescind that?
No. Well, the red card might have been, but it was definitely a penalty, wasn't it? They've changed the rules slightly on the double punishment. It was as much as a penalty as I've ever seen. He's put his leg across him and tripped him up. And I've got a big problem with VAR, and the big clubs still tend to get some of the bigger decisions. Do you know, I watched the Man United game and the Man United West Ham game, and the amount of times Ronaldo got fouled, and it did. Yeah. and this is going to contradict the big clubs, but what I'm trying to say is almost that they're not using it properly. The amount of times he got fouled and they didn't check it because they didn't think it was necessary. Well, surely somebody can watch it like we seen it 2 seconds later and say that was actually a foul.
Mm-hmm. Even the commentators were saying during the Man United game, like the Stonewall penalty, Stonewall.
100% penalty.
And the Southampton situation was the third one was definitely Stonewall. I think the first one was, unfortunately, he's clashed into his knee, but he still fouled Ronaldo, so it's a little bit hard to question it. The second one, for me, is 50-50, but the third one, 100%, was a fucking penalty, and I was pissed that we didn't get it. But obviously, handball was bang on 7 years yesterday, where Luke Shaw handled the ball in the box against Stoke. David De Gea saved that penalty, and then 7 years later, we had the same circumstance. There was a handball in the box. Unfortunately, Luke Shaw has given it away. David De Gea saved it, but I was absolutely pissed we didn't get a red card, and I can't wait to get stuck in the Man United game shortly because I'm going to do it, George. I'm going to rant. But in terms of the Southampton game, that was definitely a penalty. I do agree that the red card was rescinded. It wasn't much of a red for me either. It was definitely a red, and I was really annoyed.
I just think with these decisions that, in general, they're still far too open to interpretation. And then depending on where you play and what the crowd is and what the reputation is, the referee is still influenced. Because that was a penalty every single day of the week. He's put his leg across him. And I was trying to. I watched it back a few times, trying to watch it to find a reason for it not to be a penalty. I was thinking, did he put his leg there, and did the Southampton player kick his leg? That kind of thing. And they were talking about it, and I thought, not a chance. How can that not be? And I hate VAR anyway. I'm one of those fans who says, I don't want to go to the Premier League. I do really want to go to the Premier League. But, it's so frustrating when you see that and you think, in a way, I'm so glad it's not part of what we watch at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Nathan, what are your thoughts on the non-red card and non-penalty at Southampton?
It's definitely a penalty, straight up trip. But in my opinion, because if I recall, because I've got a bit brain fog on this one, it wasn't last man. So because it wasn't last man, it's only a booking. That's my stance on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Southampton were unlucky. The offside goal, right decision, Reece? Massively the right decision for me. That was never a goal, and it was about time that they actually got something right. And it just shows that it doesn't matter what team you play for, the decisions are going to go against you. And if that goal had been given, then I think there's definitely been a serious outcry to referees from pundits, fans, the lot, in terms of referees being influenced by decisions. I think Des was right in terms of influence. They do get influenced. But if that goal had stood, whereas a clear penalty was chalked off, then it would give a lot of cause concern and it would stand things out. So the fact that it was disallowed, definitely the right decision. But it was good to see that the referee had actually stuck to it, and even the VAR official as well, agreeing that it was not a goal. So it was great to see, and it was definitely the right right decision for me as well. Yeah, it's 100% not penalty. I would absolutely agree with that as well. We will move on to the West Ham Manchester United game, because this game was controversy everywhere you could see it. I mean, obviously West Ham took the lead through Ben Rama. That did go off Varane into the back of the net. And then Ronaldo does what Ronaldo does best, obviously scores. And then obviously, Lingard scores goes out to be the winner. Ronaldo's denied a Stonewall penalty. I do not understand how that is not a penalty. The one from Zuma, don't understand that one bit. And then Mark Noble decides to go onto the pitch. Well, obviously David Moyes decides to go on the pitch and take that penalty. So go on, Reece. You want to do some ranting, so the floor is all yours, my friend.
I look at the game in general, and what annoyed me is that the referee was clearly out to screw us over. It's Martin Atkinson. I'm not surprised. He's clearly has a Man United agenda. We should have been, like I said before, it was the definite Stonewall penalty for the third one. The first one's a little bit questionable. Could you give it, could you not? So I think fair enough not to give that one. The second one for me was still 50-50. But the third one was definitely a penalty. And the fact that it was not given in the first place made me realise that are they trying to hold United back? I know the likes of Chelsea and Liverpool are up there challenging for the league at the moment, but so are Man United. And last year we had these sort of decisions. And I'm like, are they just trying to rectify it because we had so many last year? And it just sums up to me how bad the league is at the moment with refereeing officials. Honestly, if it was me in charge, I would sack them all. I would sack every English referee because they're all shite. Simple as that. They can't do their job properly.
Oh, sugar. I've just... Sorry, wrong button.
Classic. I would sack them all. Honestly, every single English referee, I would sack them because they don't know what they're doing. I would bring in European officials. It was good to see the goal in terms of the immediate response, Ronaldo's immediate response from the deflected effort of Benrahma. Unfortunately, there's nothing that can be done there for Varane. He's doing exactly what Fred did against Southampton. He's trying to get in a position to just prevent the ball from being, like the goal being shot at. Unfortunately, it's went in of Varane's chest. It's bounced in. David De Gea can't do anything about that. So I've got no issues with that goal whatsoever. The way the team responded, I thought was fantastic in terms of playing the ball quickly, which we didn't do against Young Boys midweek. We didn't play the ball quick enough. We had no rhythm. But in this game, as the game started to open up a little bit, like I think West Ham got a little bit too overconfident, a little bit sloppy, especially Declan Rice and Souček in midfield. We took the game to them a bit more, and that's where we got the equalising goal, which was fantastic. Yeah. Second half, little things were a little bit dogged. I know, like I was on Rich Sports channel last night. Obviously, you were on with us as well, Doug. And I commented how Fred in the first half was particularly impressive in terms of what he was asked to do in terms of his grunt work with McTominay. He did that really well. In the second half, he was a little bit leggy, and West Ham recognised that, so they attacked him more. So I thought the substitution of Matic coming on was fantastic because as soon as he came on, forward pass, we got the goal, and what a fucking amazing goal by Lingard as well. A little bit of redemption from him from Tuesday, where it was the sense of, he's brought him on, he's made that mistake, he's passed it back. Yes, Granada. They've obviously, Young Boys capitalised on the Lingard back pass, which is a shame. They scored.
There is a reason why the Euros, if I recall, had no English referees and no one complained about VAR. Decision making is poor. Neil, if you are free, then obviously give me a wee message, and you can come on and talk about Brighton Leicester, because that game we will be coming to very, very shortly.
Honestly, I've said it on this podcast numerous times. I would sack every English ref. Yeah. I'd bring in Germans. Or in fact, I would bring in Willie Collum for 25 minutes, because I guarantee in 25 minutes Willie Collum would have an English game sorted. I look at Mike Dean, Martin Atkinson, that freaking Oliver clown, John Moss, who's still competing in pie eating contests, Craig Pawson as well.
He's the worst one.
5 English refs that cannot do their job properly. Fuck the lot of them. Fuck them. They don't know what they're doing. But here's the best thing. They give a penalty. Martin Noble, unfortunate he's missed. De Gea saved it. Redemption, 3 points. Boom, Bob's your uncle. We're still in the top. We're still fighting for the league.
Nathan, are West Ham a much less threatening team without Antonio?
100%. I was looking at it and I was just like, they seem to have lost their confidence.
I'll send you the link, Neil. Send you the link.
They just seem to lose their confidence without Antonio. Yes, they have the likes of Fornals, like Benrahma, Jarrod Bowen. Even though I thought, really bringing off Bowen for Mark Noble, how is Mark Noble still at that club? He's no longer Premier League quality anymore, and I wouldn't have put him on a penalty, because someone as experienced as De Gea, even though he doesn't traditionally save pens, he was all stonewalled to save that one. I would have had
in 5 years.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. I would have had someone confident to take that. I would have had a Benrahma have it.
I thought Declan Rice would have taken it personally as West Ham captain. I was surprised he let go of the ball so quickly. I was like, why are you not taking this? He would have scored. It would have been a draw, because I think West Ham spells from the game, they deserved something out of the game, but obviously I was glad we won. They did at times create plays where they did deserve a point, but I'm glad that United were still the more dominant side in terms of possession and shots on shots on Fabianski. I think Fabianski in the whole game made 10 saves. It's the most saves. It's the most he's made in a Premier League game, I think, in 2 years. 7 of those within the first half alone, something like that. So it just shows how aggressive we are with the ball. We're the highest scoring team in the league, second highest in terms of assists, and in terms of shots in the league, we're the second highest as well. We've had 62 shots in the league, 13 goals, 11 assists, and we're, in terms of saves per game, we're 9th. I think it's 15 saves, something like that. So it just shows as a team we're more impressive. It's certain things we need to improve. The only thing I would say right now that's maybe a little bit of a weakness is finding the balance in midfield. Because obviously, in terms of like conceding from open play, that's still happening, but it's like 2 deflected efforts in certain games. But the big improvement for me, instead of just attacking play, is our set piece game. We are hard outscored against from set plays now, and especially from set pieces. We should have had like 4 or 5 goals yesterday from set pieces alone. The amount of corners we had, and I think that's a weakness Man United have finally ironed out. We need to turn it into an advantage now, but it's just the fact that there were so many controversial decisions yesterday in such a good game that was end to end. Martin Atkinson spoiled a good game by clearly not doing enough of his job. I don't think he even knows what his job actually is. I think he's just lucky that he gets paid a good wage and he's like, I get to run with the big boys. Stick him in a jail cell. That's where he belongs.
Yeah, I mean, Des, you've already obviously had your say on obviously the Manchester United West Ham game with obviously the Zuma non-penalty, which I don't understand that one. Are you glad that VAR is not actually in the Championship?
Absolutely. I went to a cup tie against Chelsea a couple of years ago, and ultimately the decisions were right against Forest. Slightly offside twice, but it's just that feeling. When the goal goes in, or you get the decision and then it gets overturned. And looking at Martin Atkinson yesterday, the referees are clueless. They don't know how to use the system. That's the problem. It's from bad referees anyway. It's made them even worse because they're confused. They're absolutely confused. Just one little side note on the penalty, and I'm not sticking up for Moyes because it was ridiculous that Noble took the penalty. The commentators did say, and you didn't see it, but they did say that there was kind of a bit of who's taking the penalty. I wonder if Rice and whoever was fighting over it, and I wonder if Moyes threw on Noble to kind of diffuse an argument. He obviously stuck to his guns and said, "This is what I did," which again wasn't the right thing to do. You never put someone in that position.
I like that.
Accurate.
I just wonder whether that's why he did it. Because it's strange. It was strange, wasn't it? You seen Keane and Souness after the game was absolutely baffled by it, and like everybody else. But I just wonder whether it was because of that. Just something I picked up on from the commentary.
I wasn't. I was out with friends at the time, so I was watching the game with friends who pretty much don't watch football, and even they were like, "What the fuck's going on?" They were baffled. But the commentary I had was Leon Osman, because I was watching Premier League Live, and he was actually going, "Is this referee paid to be blind?" Like his own words, is this referee paid to be blind? Because it's 3 penalty decisions that he's waved off, but the second it's a handball against Man United, he's like, that says all for me. Like his own words is like, that says all for me, just how bad the officiating is, where they make an immediate decision from VAR, but when it's an actual foul on Ronaldo, because it's his reputation, because at times during his career he's went down so easily. But in that game, he didn't. He was legitimately fouled, and they're like, well, it's not going to happen, so they're just going to give it away. And it annoys me that, I'm a Man United fan, but to any other club, like, if these decisions happen, they're just going to get waved off. And I'm like, the referees they're making it more for themselves, thinking that they are, like, above and beyond, but they're not. And it fucking annoys me just how bad the officiating is, because it's supposed to be the best league in world football. But we've got the best teams and the best footballers and all that shit. But we've got the referees, the equivalent of the Scottish League 2.
Did you see the one in the Newcastle game? Leeds.
Yeah.
Why is it not picked up on? Why is the decision not picked up on? It was another absolute stonewall penalty, and they just ignored it. I don't get it. I don't get why it goes up the other end and then they'll go back for 2 minutes. Yeah, some incidents like that they don't look at.
Yeah, it is ridiculous. But we do have to move on because we have still got a lot to discuss. Let's go through actually Newcastle Leeds, because that finished 1-1. Both sides remain winless. Reece, Alan St-Maximin. I mean, this guy is an absolute speedster. He's a trickster. Newcastle, they're going to be very, very lucky to hold on to him, I think.
I said it back in March, man. The only way Newcastle don't get relegated from the Premier League is if they keep Alan St-Maximin. And now they're going to struggle because he is literally their best attacking input, creative input as well. Like, what he does is electrifying to watch, and he doesn't have like the numbers of, say, like Sadio Mane or Mo Salah in terms of his position, or even like Marcus Rashford. But he has that influence on Newcastle, like them, like with his pace, his influence on the ball, power, strength with holding the ball as well. Like, it's hard to out-muscle, say, Maximin. And I've said it before, people think Callum Wilson's is the biggest threat for Newcastle. Is he buggery? It's definitely, say, Maximin. And if they lose him, they will be relegated. It doesn't matter when, even if they survive this season. If they were to lose, say, Maximin to, say, a Liverpool, who I think would make a lot of sense, or somehow if he went to Arsenal, or I'm just trying to think of anyone in the league, or even if he went abroad again, they would get relegated that season if they lost them. If they lose them next summer, Newcastle are getting relegated.
Yes.
Des, are you worried about Leeds?
Worried? Not really. They'll be okay. They'll take games to the teams that they should. Without dwelling on that penalty, if they'd have got the penalty, there would have been no way back. You know, it would have been 2-0 and it would have been game over. So as long as they keep sort of stick to the guns, you know, it works for them to some degree. You know, until they can sign, if they can sign world-class players, which they can't in the position they're in. You know, it's not broke, is it? You know, it doesn't need fixing. So I think they'll be all right when they come up against certain teams at home. You know, the Norwiches and Burnleys and sides. They're going to get enough points. They're not going to. They'll shock the odd big team. You know, they'll have a 4-3, or they might even turn someone over 3-0. But they won't have it'll be about beating all those teams that they should do to get them comfortably into 12th, 13th. I don't see them having a tough season.
They need to get Rafinha back into his best possible attacking positions, because he's not been able to attack teams the way he loves to do recently. And even when he plays for that lot, he's an absolute joy to watch. And even Phillips as well, they need to get the best out of him as well. Otherwise, they will struggle, because they're two excellent players who could end up gone next year if Leeds don't turn things around.
Nathan, I'll give you this game because you got this absolutely spot on. Wolves 0, Brentford 2. You have to say, Brentford, I thought, were absolutely magnificent. Christopher Ayer, Christian Norgard, Mbeumo, Ivan Toney. I mean, this Brentford side looks like they've been playing Premier League football for about 4 or 5 years. I was really impressed with the way they played.
They have been preparing for years in the Championship with their Moneyball tactics. And honestly, I really want to know the deluded prat on Twitter from one of these major corporations who said that Mbeumo was the worst winger in the Premier League out of the 20 sides.
He's clearly never watched Townsend play football.
Exactly. I mean, just the style of football where they attack teams, they don't sit back, and they're confident. It's like where they've been there for years instead of being a bit nervous and stuff. But Wolves worry me.
Yeah. Good evening to Neil from Beyond the 90. How you doing, Neil?
I'm all good, mate. I'm all good. Thanks for having me on. It's a late night. I was thinking, I'm not going to do recording this, so I was like, go on then. So I thought I'd take this. But yeah, great to be on as usual. But big up everybody in the comments as well.
No, not a problem. The reason we wanted to bring you on because I saw your post match yesterday of this game, and you were seething. Like, you were seething with rage. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen you that angry. But we've all got to Brighton 2, Leicester 1. I mean, the one thing I don't get, right, is why you've been given a penalty against you when clearly Mopai is clearly fouling Vestergaard.
Yeah, that was the first one. And looking at it in slow motion, I was like, come on, man, you've not seen that. And they've not, again, it's kind of the decision why they were looking just at the handball. If they looked at the fact that the fouls before, because if that's offside and the ball goes in the back of the net, they count it's just so many things. I was like, yeah, this is so annoying. However, fair play to Brighton. They deserve to be ahead in the first half because they were the better side. If they were a more clinical side, I mean, Brighton are a good team, but we made them look good. And it's one of them performances where I want to give them credit, but at the same time, I want to bash us at the same time. So you got to kind of do both. Yeah, that was the embarrassment. In the second half, I've never been so angry. I'm not gonna lie. It was been a while since I've been that angry at a result. Because we deserve something out of the game. I know Reece was saying earlier it was kind of like Man United were battering West Ham, and I think Man City fans were like, we didn't deserve anything from Southampton, yet we got a point. We kind of had the opposite. And normally I can go, fair enough. If the better team won, I think you guys know me. I'm relatively like, the better team won, no problem. We can hold our hands up. But this wasn't it. This wasn't the better team won. And what I really hated, the fact that I knew the agendas were going to be pushed against Leicester, because it was going to be like, well, they're falling off. They're not a good team. James Maddison, this, that, and the other, which is a good point, but it's not the only point. There's lots of little stories along the way. But you can't, as I always say, you can't fit it to 140 characters, so it doesn't count.
That's spot on.
Yeah, I mean, Des, obviously, I know that obviously Leicester, are another forces rivals, but the officiating in that game just baffled me yesterday.
Yeah, you've heard my opinions on VAR. I looked at that game and I looked at the results. I only saw the highlights, but you just think that game should have been so different. So VAR has had a massive impact on a football match. It's supposed to be there to get the right result, but the reality is it's changed the game completely. The wrong team has won. I don't want to admit that, but the wrong team has won, and you think that's not what it's there for. It's there to get the right result. It's there to create goals, and it's stopping goals.
But sorry, mate. Is it a problem with VAR? Is it a problem with the refs? Because the thing is, we know that it can work. It's worked in the leagues. It's worked in the Euros. Why is it not working now? It's the refereeing, and it's not good enough.
Yeah, I just said they didn't. The referees are confused. It's as simple as that. They're not they're not well enough trained on it. Great point I saw and you've just made there in the Euros. It worked. Nobody was talking about it all of a sudden. Nobody was talking about it. Everyone forgot it was there. And when it was needed, it was used properly and it got the right result. But all of a sudden, we've come back to the Premier League. Last season, they refused to look at the monitor. Now they go to the monitor, look at the monitor, make the wrong decision. How can this be?
Or they look at VAR for 2 seconds and they send off a player against Liverpool. Reece James, by the way, that was not a red card.
I mean, the officiating has been a joke this whole weekend. Got to a surprise result, which I have to say, I expected Watford to win, but I didn't expect them to win by this much. 3-1, Nathan.
Yeah, no surprise to me. Norwich look absolutely atrocious. They did the double over them in the Championship last year. And not only that, I believe Brentford did the double over them as well. But
they did.
Norwich are really allergic to playing teams around them or better than them. It's like, I go on about their style of play all the time, how it just does not work in the Prem, but there's no plan B, once again. There's no quality for that side that can sustain survival in the Premier League. Watford, they will fight to stay up, and I think there's a slight chance that they will. They look superb in areas. They just got to keep the consistency there. But honestly, looking at Norwich at the moment and that performance against Watford, I am really, really struggling now to see where they're going to at least get 1 point this season. And it's pretty much guaranteed that they're going to be the worst Premier League side of all time, even
Called it.
going above that Derby side. But
You can't mention, Derby. Yeah,
Yeah.
we can't have that. We can't have that.
I
going.
did say before the
Yeah,
season
I know.
started that fucking Norwich would get less points, and people went, "Nah, that's a bit too disrespectful."
Yeah,
I was
I
like,
said the
"No,
same.
I was adamant they would get less points."
But yeah,
I got a yo-yo
they're
in the
trouble.
supermarket said Norwich. Oh dear.
I'm going out to
Our
say
next
that
game.
if they don't get 0, they're going to get 2. If that,
Our next
2
game
would
is
be
Norwich. Knowing us will give them their first points of the season.
Nah, you'll slap Norwich, to be honest.
It'll be
Yeah,
interesting.
that's why, yeah.
It'll be interesting where that is, James, because the last time that Norwich did play you, I think they won 2-0 at the Goodison. So I obviously I hope that doesn't happen anyway.
Ooh, really?
Reece,
Interesting.
Thiago's out for 2
Burnley.
weeks.
What's that?
Thiago's out for injury. Neil just put in the private chat. Thiago's out.
Oh,
for 2
sorry,
weeks
I
with
was
calf
gonna.
injury.
I didn't want to interrupt. But Thiago's
Oh,
out
that's-
for 2 weeks with a calf injury.
That's all right. That literally just came off my screen as well.
You were saying?
Reece, Burnley 0, Arsenal 1. Arsenal have not lost at Turf Moor since 1973. That run continues. Have to say, good free kick by Odegaard.
Yeah, good free kick. Terrible performance. Really, I thought Arsenal were once again just lucky to grind out a result. They're sloppy. They're no longer in the relegation zone. Damn.
Yeah.
But they are sloppy to watch. So yeah, they're getting that's back-to-back 1-0 wins against Norwich and Burnley. That's embarrassing. They should be slapping these teams 3-0 each. They should be. But I look at that and I'm surprised they've got. I'm surprised they've got back-to-back wins. I'm genuinely surprised.
Yeah.
And I look at it and I'm thinking they need these moments if they want to avoid defeat, because I don't see any vision of Arsenal going forward. I don't like Arteta. I don't like. Yeah, fair enough. Spurs have lost back-to-back 3-0 against the likes of Palace, and they've lost to Chelsea. Now they're going to play Arsenal, so who knows? It could be another 3-0 defeat on Sunday. But I just think in terms of Arsenal,
Arsenal started winning at the same time Spurs have started losing.
Yeah, it's quite
I smell
interesting.
conspiracy. Detective Dolan is on the case.
Yeah, I just don't see anything from Arsenal. I'm genuinely not convinced by them. 1-0 wins doesn't. There's Arsenal fans that still think they're now back in to finish top 4. They think they're going to get the top 6. No, you bloody ain't. You're not even going to finish 9th. Generally, how can you say 2 wins, 1-0 is enough to say we're back in it? We're going to finish in the top 8 or the top 7.
There was also
imagine
there
what
was
Toy
also-
was saying. If you think that's bad, he probably
that
thought
Phil Kit wanker's probably going to say we're winning the league, lads. I was like,
Oh,
yeah,
Jesus.
I bet he did after 2 games.
There was a decision in this one that divided opinion as well. Was it a penalty on Ashley Barnes
100%
from Ramsdale?
For me, it was.
Yeah.
He's went in and clattered him. How can they not give that? How can you not give that on
Burnley
Barnes?
have been robbed of a point there.
I'm like, is it because of the most boring team to ever exist in football? I know I hate Burnley, but genuinely, it was a penalty in my eyes. It should have been a penalty, and yep, they've been robbed again of a decision, and Arsenal have got away with it. The king of relegations has got a clean sheet, and it pisses me off.
I have to bow down to this man, Mr. Dominic Rich. Thank you very much for joining. I hope you are doing well. Thank you very much for having me on your channel the other week there. I really do appreciate it. Guys, go and subscribe to Dominic Rich. He does Premier League content as well.
He's a City fan, eh?
He is a City fan, but he is closing in on 50k subscribers, so we can get him there before October. That'd be absolutely
wonder what Dom's
amazing.
opinions on Southampton are, 'cause I haven't watched.
Yeah, I have Arsenal in 14th below Brentford. Says Hella.
Oh, yeah. Brentford will finish above them. I just look in and I'm like, I'm so impressed by Brentford. Can we
hello to Devils United, Maisie. Thank you very much for tuning in as well.
Is Des drunk?
Brandon's asking, are you drunk, Des?
That's lethal.
Yeah, he had me on his channel that often. I'd had a drink one day and I was talking a bit of rubbish. So I've not been able to forget about it.
I just look at the league and I'm like, Arsenal are just I don't. As much as like they're winning 1-0, they're flattering to deceive. Like they're not typical Arsenal performances. They're weak in midfield. They've got no character. They've got no fight. They're still relying on deadbeats like Aubameyang. Like it just says all for me how far they've fallen, and to an extent they deserve it. And they're until they make serious cutthroat changes, they're going to be where they are.
Yeah,
They've
I
got
agree.
the joint second worst goal difference in the league as well.
Are they like -7 or something?
-7 with Leeds, Newcastle. Only Norwich have -12. -12 already.
-12. Ouch!
Well.
Ouch!
They
That
deserve this.
is really bad. Liverpool 3, Crystal Palace 0, Nathan. I have to say, and I'll obviously be honest here, Crystal Palace played really, really well. A 3-0, as Klopp said, is a hard-fought 3-0. But Liverpool played well. Their African scorers as well. Salah, Mane, and Keita, all on the score sheet as well. Are you happy with the way Palace are playing now, that they've gone away from this pragmatic style from Roy Hodgson to a more attacking base with Patrick Vieira?
Yeah, it's actually really exciting to watch as well. I had my massive doubts when Vieira first come in, especially with his lack of managerial pedigree. And I thought when he was at Nice, actually watching that team firsthand against us in a friendly, it was pretty poor.
Yeah,
style of play. But he seems, with the signings he's got as well, that it's really started well, and it's really exciting to see Palace. But it should not have been 3-0 in my opinion. It's just Liverpool was so hard fought in that attack to get that victory. But if that was against any other team, Palace would have had them that day. It's just the fact that Liverpool were extremely good.
There was a decision in this game as well that could have potentially changed things. Tsimikas on Benteke, Nathan, penalty or no penalty? Because I'll be straight up, I thought that was a penalty. When I was watching it on Saturday, I actually watched the game live, and I have to say I thought that was a penalty because Tsimikas has got that wee guilty look. He's actually got that wee guilty look, and actually he does foul Benteke.
Yeah, I mean, I got the one. Yeah, that's a penalty. Holds his hands up. Yeah, takes him down. There was contact on it as well, so yeah, Stonewall. Once it's just game after game after game with all these decisions. Like, it's shocking, the refereeing, honestly.
I tell you something, Reece. Big game for Crystal Palace on Monday. They've got Brighton, so a big derby game on Monday. So we'll probably be keeping a close eye on that one, I would imagine.
Well, it won't be long until Brighton are at the top 4, which will probably
That's
be
mental. That
probably
absolutely
will be
mental that they're still top 4. Top 4.
It's so fun. It's so funny. I actually think this will be a high-scoring draw. Personally, I think the way their teams are going, I think Palace will get a couple of goals. I think Brighton will as well. But I just think in terms of the game itself, it's great to see that it's. I think this is one of the best Palace teams I've seen in quite a long time. In terms of Brighton, they're still taking the league by storm for the moment, but that's a good start for them. But that will die down very shortly. When it does, I'll be smiling because I can't stand Brighton for shit.
Also, shout out to Ali, the Palace fan, who is a very good friend of the channel, very good friend of ours as well. He went to Liverpool to go to a wedding. So I feel sorry for him having to be surrounded by his Liverpool mates, who will probably be rinsing him that they lost 3-0. But do you know what?
I said to you last night, that was a 2-1 game, not a 3-0.
Yeah.
And as somebody who supports a team outside the top 6, you're always surrounded by Liverpool fans. Liverpool and Man United fans are everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. See you, Doug. Have to work on some stuff. Have to tune in more, or even join one of these days. You're more than welcome to join, Dominic. Just give me a wee message. Whenever you're not working on Monday, we can definitely get you on, my friend. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon. Right. Which one do I give Aston Villa 3, Everton 0 to? Do I give it to the Leicester fan or the Forest fan? Ooh. Okay.
Can we just say
I'll,
East Midlands and West Midlands are different rivalries? They're not the same. We are Midlands, but East Midlands has its own thing. Well, it used to, because now Derby, we don't know what actually happens with Derby. Coventry, the closest rival we've got in the Midlands is, I don't know if it's the same with Nottingham Forest, but it's Coventry is ours in the West Midlands.
the Coventry.
Yeah.
So M6, yeah.
It would
I don't
be
know if it's what you
Coventry.
think, Dev.
Mm-hmm.
We don't
Geographic, yeah.
consider anybody rivals. I don't mind talking about Villa because one of the real stars for them is Matty Cash, and what a player he is.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I was devastated when we lost him. Bizarrely, Sabri Lamucci turned him into a right back, and he's turned him into a superstar because
He's been fantastic.
He's phenomenal, and that first goal, he scored a lot of those for Forest. You know, he's kind of popping up in the box, and it seems speculative, but they're all at the top corner. You know, so what a player, and what a snip for Aston Villa. You know, just interesting. It's totally relevant, but he was on £6,000 a week apparently at Forest. He signed a deal at Villa for 60, and then he got a pay rise to 100. So in 1 year, he went from £6,000 a week to £100,000 a week. That's incredible, isn't it?
It is mental. It is mental. I'm completely impressed with Aston Villa. One player in particular I said would come strong eventually in the league when he gets a chance is Leon Bailey. His debut game at his first appearance at Villa Park. 21 minutes and he was man of the match. Says it all for me, just how fantastic he was. He's a phenomenal player that I've watched for many years because I'm a big German football fan. And he was absolutely electric to watch in Bayer Leverkusen. And I said on our tier list show last week about strikers and all that, or wingers who's going to be the most goals. I said he won't score a lot of goals because it's not what he is, but he scores important goals, and he's a creator. And we've seen that in 21 minutes. He literally tore everything apart.
James has said we've lost Richarlison, Calvert-Lewin, Pickford, and Coleman due to injuries, and I am worried. James Rodriguez is off to join a team in Qatar. Thank God he's going.
How bad he's what a failure, you could say.
He's went from
what a downfall.
Terrible.
He's went from dominating the Portuguese league with Radamel Falcao and Jackson Martinez to absolutely flooring it for Monaco with Falcao again. He then floors it at the World Cup, scores a beautiful volley, goes to Real Madrid for 73 million, sinks so easily, and now I look at him and I'm like, look how far you've fallen. Now you're away to play in Qatar. You reeking mercenary.
Rich Sports. Last time we lost to Villa was 2009. Guess who the ref was?
I'm saying nothing.
Was it Twatkinson? Was it?
Yeah, it was Twatwankson.
Even Colombia don't want him anymore, says Declan. I think that's
they've replaced him completely. It's a shame, really, because every time, the games I watched from him play, I don't know why he gets played on the wing because he's an attacking midfielder. On his day, he's absolutely brilliant to watch, and he tears teams apart with that left foot. He tears people apart with that left foot, and when his level drops, it drops really bad. And I'm like, as a top player, for all you've achieved in football, that should never happen as a pro footballer, and it's so embarrassing. Obviously, Everton they're going to have to look at things now. For Rafa Benitez, what's he going to do with his system? Because now he's losing the player who's been playing on the right hand side. Who's he going to play out there? Because in all fairness, their winger options are quote unquote shite.
Yeah,
he's got Demar Gray.
He's crap.
He's not.
He's average.
It's a weird one.
We'll be nice. He's average. But he's not the answer to the problems, though.
As somebody that's watched him game in, game out, Leicester are, as we know, a team that develops young talent. And it could just be that, but there's a reason why people forget, and he's on his great run. I'm happy for him to be on the great run. And let's hope that he does it for another team, just hopefully not against us. But, there's kind of part of you that's like, you're going to do it against us. It's going to be really annoying.
Probably.
But if you can keep it up for a whole season, we've seen him have fits and spurts. I remember the match against Man United. Remember that when he scored, it was 4-0 down. He scored a worldie for 4-4.
Yeah.
Absolute out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And things like that. The potential is there, but decision making was wrong. If he sorts that out, then he could be a good player. However, he went to restart his career at Bayer Leverkusen. Bearing in mind they've already lost Leon Bailey. They signed him for us in January 2021. They already want him at the club in July for 1.5 mil. So
10 million loss on him is crazy.
Yeah,
it's a lot.
And the thing is, it's not that he's crap or he's average. It's the fact is, it doesn't matter what role he's going to be asked of. He's still not, in the sense right now for Benitez, he's still not the answer to fix their wing problems. They need something in there, and I don't know what Benitez is going to do. Does he change his system? Does he play a diamond 4-4-2 and play, instead of playing wingers, does he just play central midfielders behind a number 10? Although he doesn't have a number 10 anymore anyway. Both of them are gone. One for irreconceivable circumstances, the other because he's an absolute twat. And I just think now, what does Rafa do? What does Rafa do now? And this is where he's going to be tested in terms of Everton, in terms of fitting things around. And because he's got the experience to manage it, we'll see what he does. But it is a big ask.
I think Everton will be fine.
Well.
Yeah.
I think against Newcastle, and Newcastle were a lot poorer side than that. I think they lost where they lost Perez and they lost somebody, and they lost a couple of other players, and then they still managed to do it. Rafa knows what he's doing.
It's going to be interesting to see what he does, though. It'll be interesting to see what he does, though. But this is an interesting match for him.
Right, we have final game: Tottenham 0, Chelsea 3. Chelsea are just on absolute fire. Well, Tottenham, it's back-to-back 3-0 defeats, and they drew 2-2 with Rennes the other night there. But let's obviously speak about Chelsea. Nathan, were you impressed with Chelsea yet again?
Yeah, absolutely superb. I mean, Tuchel has worked out the system. Just everyone at that club is just, it's amazing. But the one thing I'd really like to touch on is Tottenham. I said it last week as well, but if you're a good tactician and you know how to work out football, then you can beat a Nuno Espirito Santo side. He plays the same football, the same tactics, always the back five as well. He has no plan B. And if you're able to explore the weaknesses in that side, you will beat them minimum 1-0, but maybe even 3-4-0. I mean, we've seen it with him at Wolves so many times, even in the Championship, and when they were there the first 2 seasons in the Prem as well. But even if they lose their key players, they are in trouble as well. And the fact that Jimenez hasn't stepped up to his form that he did have a few years ago, they're going to have massive issues this season, and they're going to be flirting with relegation too. But yeah, Chelsea, surely this has got to make them contenders for the title this year. Yeah.
Just to let people know,
amazing to see him score as well.
Just to let people know, Mike Dean is the referee for Manchester United Aston Villa.
He's going to ruin it.
Oh dear.
It's all right, mate. You've got VAR to rely on.
He's gonna fuck us over like he did at Sheffield United back last.
We've got the worst. We've got Stuart Atwell. Anyway, but the reason I have wanted to get all of your opinions on this, right, is Harry Kane hampering Tottenham's form, right?
Yes.
I watched that game against Chelsea, and I will say now, Harry Kane looked disinterested. He didn't want to get the ball. He looked like he just wanted to not be there. Is Harry Kane hampering Spurs as a team? Because if you look at the wins against Wolves, if you look at the wins against Watford, and Man City, Kane didn't play in those games. Okay, you look at the last 2 games. They have lost 3-0 against Crystal Palace and Chelsea. So, Des, are Spurs being hampered with Harry Kane in the side?
I don't think it's as simple as that. Harry Kane's a quality player who anybody would take every day of the week. And because of the fact he's not signed for Manchester City, he's got to play. It's as simple as that. would I keep a player that wanted to leave? Absolutely not. You know, there's going to be something in there where he's not giving it quite 100%, as much as he probably wants to, as much as he thinks he's doing the right thing. You know, something somewhere is just going to hold him back a little bit. You know, it might be that tackle he should make, or getting in front of a man for a header, that kind of thing. So, Nathan spoke about Nuno Espirito's tactics, for example. That's not going to help, especially against a good side. Against Crystal Palace, I'm not quite sure what happened there. I didn't see the game, but I think that there's a degree of it, isn't there? And they've got to sort of. It's like when you have an argument, you've got to get back. You've got to ease back together, you know, and start to feel comfortable around each other. And I think to some degree, Kane's probably sort of easing his way back into the team. Probably the people around him, you know, Daniel Levy or the manager, probably they're not quite on the same page at the moment. And I think it'll all come good, you know, because he is too good. He does start the season like this. Notoriously, if there was a thing for many years that he didn't score in August. He'd never scored in August at one point.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I think watching the game on Sky yesterday and the chaps talking on there and getting really sort of irate with him, they was absolutely right. Well, he's a striker, and at the end of the day, he needs to get himself on the end of things. I think he's a bit frustrated. You know, Tottenham have become, from a really enterprising side, they've become really sort of workmanlike in midfield.
Yeah.
You know, the two midfielders, and the fact I think they was in even more protective mode because of the defence that they couldn't put out. You know, so he was going to fetch his own balls. He was trying to do a bit too much on his own. You know, when Tottenham are on fire, when they've got players, Son and occasionally Bale last year or whoever, you know, Lo Celso, when they're on fire and bombing forward and they've got them dynamic midfielders in place, Harry Kane can do what he wants.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that, isn't it? So yeah, I guess he is to some degree, but I don't think you could do very much about it. You know, I think Michael Richards was putting the argument, what do you do then? Nothing, because I think ultimately he will drive Tottenham on. And it wouldn't surprise me if it's the game on this weekend against Arsenal, you know, because that's kind of what he's there for, isn't it?
But surely, Nathan, you would be obviously up for every single game, not just like some games, because you look at Kane's body language at the weekend, and like he just like Crystal Palace marked him out of the game. Chelsea did well to, you know, mark him out of the game. Okay, I know Chelsea weren't great in the first half, but we can obviously say that for another time. But the worrying thing for me is, if Kane is not up for it, why do you play him?
Exactly. I mean, he should have been dropped ages ago. And even when the transfer window was open, I thought it was a massive mistake playing him, because he clearly does not want to be at the club. He wants to be sold, yet you still play him, and you get performances like that. He needs to be dropped saying, look, we're not going to sell you. We're going to keep you off the team until we are satisfied that you are either going to stay at the club or you're going to go. We want a decision like that. And not only that, it's given to him that he does not want to be at the club. And if he's getting performances like that, then his attitude is terrible. He should be dropped and sold, because it's going to be bad for both parties, and they might as well get the money for him now than wait for a player to get back to his form who doesn't want to be there and see performances like that.
Yeah, Neil, do you think Kane will have one eye on the January window?
But who's going to want to buy him with his injury record? And also, if he's not performing now, why would any team want to buy him? I think you got to remember that every team has a player that they look to and to go. When things are going wrong, they always go in. They go, what's going to happen? So, for example, the one I used last year was Fernandinho for Man City. Was that guy that when everything goes wrong, he's like, this is not on. I'm grabbing this by the scruff of the neck. We are not. I think it was against us at 5-2, and they go, we are not losing like this again. Let's snap out of it and get back up there. And if you're for Tottenham, the star man is Harry Kane. If he's down in tools, then the rest of the team's going to go, well, and we're going to carry Harry Kane. He's a Tottenham fan. I know they love him, but they've got to be disappointed with that. He will come good. I think he'll still get a load of goals this season. But also one thing I want to say as well, just kind of on the Fernandinho thing, they don't have a leader that will go, right, we're gonna get this and go forward. They've got nobody that's got experience at winning at the top level or grabbing the gate, because you're really tested as a team. I think all of our teams have seen it. When the chips are down, when everything's going to shit, then you've got to go, right, now who's going to pick up the pieces? And I can't see a single person at that. I can't see Nuno being that person. I can't see the centre. Can you name a single Tottenham person? It should be Harry Kane, because he is the golden boy of England. And if, to be fair, if that's another player, he's getting criticised way more than that. 100%. But because it's
100%.
golden boy Harry Kane, he gets away with a lot more, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, Reece, he's a media darling of English football. So, like, this, like, people, like, basically, remember that tweet he came out, like, he thought, everything's forgiven. But with a bad performance like that, the fans will want to have, have Nuno to have a serious talking to. But I suppose a game that can get him really up is the North London derby, who, he's the highest scorer, I think, in North London derby history. But what did you make of Harry Kane's performance yesterday?
I've always been consistent with Harry Kane in terms of performances. He's always up there, top professional and all that, and he delivers when it matters, and I'll give him that. But I honestly agree with Nathan in terms of, like, if there's a player that's unsettled, don't play them unless they're fully committed. And I'm going to use one player that seems to be constantly in the limelight for the similar circumstance, and that's Pogba. He's always in that same circumstance of, his agent's a cunt. Is Pogba the issue? No, it's not. Pogba's not the issue. It's his agent who's always making these issues, which then reflects on Paul. And Paul's having to deal with the fan base, the media, stupid agendas, and whether the manager plays him or not. And he does, in fact, show to his game that he is committed to the club. And I've seen that in performances. But in terms of Harry Kane, I haven't seen him show any form of commitment to Tottenham. And I think the one thing that stands out, and honestly, God, Gary Neville, you're a Man United legend, I'll give you all this, but you're a fucking clueless hypocrite, mate. Because how can you call the England captain, by the way, who, to be fair, is quite average, how can you actually say that he is a saint, a top professional, when he doesn't turn up to training? You should always turn up to training, whether you are in the midst of being sold or you're going to be kept on. Doesn't matter who you are, you turn up and do your job. If it was one of us at our jobs, if we were in the midst of decision making, or do we want to move elsewhere, if we didn't show up for work for one day, we would all be in our manager's office getting the sack. We would be. There's no denying it. And I'm thinking, it's because he's that media darling, he's got all that status, he thinks he's above everybody else. No, you're freaking not. And what annoys me. And that's what annoys me is that attitude, and that needs to be reflected. And the fact that he's not fully committing these last two performances for these games, he's going too deep when he doesn't have to be. He's not showing enough commitment. He's 30 yards away from the frickin' box when he should be there getting on the ball. There was one comment. I watched the highlights. I watched a video. It was on YouTube. It was Souness, Keane, and Michael Richards. They were talking about Harry Kane's performance in particular. And there was one comment that stood out. Funnily enough, it was Graham Souness. I can't believe I'm agreeing with him, but he spoke sense. He said, even when the ball was out wide, Harry Kane is not getting into the box. Like, he doesn't actually care. Like, he's not getting in the box to actually make an attempt, to even have an attempt to get near Chelsea's goal at all. He's not actively interested. And I'm like, well, if you're not interested, then just go and sit on the bench and get somebody else to play who actually wants to, like that young Parrott guy. Let him have a go. Like, he may be 18, 19 years old, but I bet you he would actually get into the box because he's committed to Tottenham. Like, I look at around him and I'm like, this is an issue for him. If he's their best player by a mile, but he's not actually wanting to show commitment. If that was anybody else in the Premier League, they would be lambasted. But because it's Harry Kane, he gets off scot-free, and that fucking annoys me.
Yeah, Neil, you were going to say something?
Just on the back of what Reece was saying, I've just shared I was thinking, what did he say again? I went and read it, and it's given completely different context now. If you bring up the, I can read it now. It's almost 10 years since I made my Spurs debut. Every single one of the years, the fans have shown me totally loyal and support. That's why it hurts to read some of the comments that have been made this week, questioning my professionalism. I won't go into the specific situation, but I want to clarify that I would never and have never refused to train. That would be return. I will return to the club tomorrow as planned. This is for me is killer. I wouldn't do anything to jeopardize the relationship I have with the fans who have given me so much unwavering support during this time with the club. They've always this has always been the case today, Harry Kane. So even from them words now, you can tell that this was only a couple of months ago that he's not stuck to his word.
Yeah,
even if it is
Chris,
one match, sure, but it spits in the face of fans again because he's attacking them when he's doing the opposite. Proper hypocritical.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Chris well said it's all words, all words, all words,
I
all
think
words as well.
I think it's just interesting that you mentioned, Doug, that has he got an eye on the transfer window? It's interesting that City, all of a sudden, Pep's getting lambasted for no strikers. So this could go on. This could get sort of deeper and deeper, and all of a sudden it could be a massive thing by January.
Yeah, it could well be. Nathan, can you see City going back in for him in January?
At the moment, no. Only because of the way his attitude is. But if things start to turn around, then I think they'll have a punt at it because they really do need a striker.
Yeah.
Jesus, for me, doesn't mark up to it. But yeah, perfect club for Kane.
I don't think... I look at that and Kane doesn't... Pep doesn't appreciate that sort of attitude from a player. Like, you saw it was Zlatan at Barcelona.
It could get him back in line, though. That's the thing. Yeah,
it could, but I just think that sort of attitude he will not appreciate. I look at like the perfect example is Zlatan. He signed him to help him complete the sextuple in 08-09 when they completed that going into the 09-10 season.
Yeah,
he was still heavily involved in the team, but his attitude, although Zlatan's one of the absolute best to play the game, he was still heavily critical in that sense for his behaviour, and I think Pep doesn't like that sort of attitude. He got rid of Samuel Eto'o as quick as he could because he's a player with too much character and too much attitude, and he's one of the best I ever saw. Yeah. But the second he gets a player like Harry Kane, and if he has the same sort of attitude, he will be out the door in his arse. Like, he will be. I think it'd be a mistake if they go in for Kane. I think they're better off looking elsewhere.
The thing is, I agree to the most part, but Riyad Mahrez spits in the face of that. His attitude was terrible when he left before he left Leicester City, and he was benched for quite a while. I think 2 years. He didn't really get a decent performance. Now, after 2 years, he's got his act in order. When he's kind of past his, but he's still a quality player. Don't get me wrong, but he's kind of 30, 31 now. So he's coming to kind of the end of his peak of his career, and now he's turning it up. So again, that's one that can kind of counteract that.
He could do. He could do it, though. I agree. He could certainly do it, but I just hate the fact is, like, he's a player that I admire Harry Kane, but his attitude, honestly, it's appalling to see from such a so-called saint and professional. Like, and he has to come and attack fans, like, and being hypocritical about it. That's not what you're there for. I think it's absolutely pathetic.
Chris Welsh says, I'm sick of certain players like Kane being treated like a good boy by some people, didn't turn up for training. That's criminal. Some people treat him like a dog who's been good dog, giving him dog treat. Yeah, absolutely.
Even Pogba, in circumstances, Pogba, when he was getting criticised in the media, Pogba never once failed to turn up. Like, if his performances may not have been great at times, but he was still delivering. But he always turned up for training. He always turned up for matches, and he always at least put in 100% on the pitch. Harry Kane, for me, I haven't seen it.
James Dunlop says, I can't see City getting Kane in January. You don't see many big January deals these days. Kane wants to leave. Body language says it in the last 2 league games. If Tottenham had a brain and eyes, they would sell Kane. He wants to leave. You should always sell a player that wants to leave, as Des said earlier. Put Lukaku in that position and imagine the dog's abuse he'd get. Absolutely. Yeah, he would be. If I'm Spurs, I'd seriously start planning for a Kane-less future now. Get Moura and Son more involved. They're the guys left behind once again. When Kane said he was staying at Tottenham, it's all words, and all words means nothing. So that's what we were saying as well. And then Hella says he's throwing a strop. Put a foreigner in Kane's position. I'm not normally this cynical, but the English bias is crazy. Lukaku, Salah, or Mahrez don't turn up for training and watch the outcry.
Can you see a potential front three for Spurs being Brian Gill on the left, maybe Son through the middle, and Moura or Bergwijn up top? Because I know Bergwijn and Moura are a little bit hit and miss, but I look at Brian Gill, who's coming in. He's got to live up.
Especially with Bergwijn.
Yeah, like Moura and Bergwijn, they're like, with the ball, they're brilliant to watch. Like, especially when they're coming at you with pace, like, they are brilliant. It's the end product I think at times they lack, but Brian Gill's got
Yeah.
to prove himself, but I look at Son and I'm thinking he's the best option to actually put through the middle. I think he's the best option now. But do you see anything for Nuno in terms of fixing things? Because he has to drop Kane. He has to drop him.
Son can't carry a team.
No, he
Harry
can't.
Kane
No.
can.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Original
Son
Gunner.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Original Gunner says Kane should be England captain. If this is his attitude because he didn't get his move, as athletes at the top, people are meant to look up to him. And if this is his attitude, then it sucks. I'd sell, to be honest. If as a foreign player, people howl at the moon like a wolf. Yeah, absolutely as well. And Declan said it's going to take Kane a while to get back to wanting to give everything for Spurs. He obviously had been sold the idea that he was off to City, and he probably feels betrayed by Levy, now playing with a very average Spurs side.
Contract in 2021. Come on, man.
Yeah,
Gentleman's agreement.
Exactly.
That's fair,
guys.
Fair comments all round.
Guys, that is all we've got time for on the World of Football podcast. A big thank you to Neil for jumping on very, very late as well. Thank you very much for coming on as well. What have you got coming up on Beyond the 90?
Well, we've got a very special interview hopefully soon. I can't tell people that, but there's a big smile on my face. We've got an interview just today's been released with one of the BBC journalists, which will be quite good. Then just kind of your usual football stuff, but within the next month, we've got a very big international coming, an ex-international. I don't want to say too much, but I'm really looking forward. I'm so excited to bring you to that one, but I can't tell you just yet. But thanks for having me on, Doug. Now, I appreciate your last minute thing, but yeah, brilliant to have me on. Thank you.
No, not a problem. Nathan, thank you very much as well. Who have Cardiff got coming up?
We've got Blackburn Rovers this weekend. I was contemplating going to that one, but after recent performances and the fact that I've got to be in England the next day anyway, I won't be going to that one, unfortunately. But honestly, even if we would have won, then I probably would have gone to it. But yeah, it's just the fact that like recent performances, I'm going to give this one a miss. But either way, come on, City. And thanks for having me on as usual, Doug.
No problem. Big thank you to Des for coming on as well and giving us all things insights into Nottingham Forest, and hopefully your fortunes will change as well. Have you got a channel?
I have, yeah. It's called Do Daily. Please subscribe. I'm just kind of starting out with it. Basically, I do a lot of. It's not football related. I do a lot of running and health and well-being. So I try to just talk about sort of like mental health and positivity without getting deep, So I just talk about myself, 5 or 10 minutes each day, just to say this is what I'm doing, try and encourage activity, try and encourage people just to talk a bit more. It's just something a little bit different. It's a tough subject, so I'm struggling with subscribers, so please give it a follow. But great to come on, really enjoy being part of it. Great conversation, guys.
Oh, well, it was our pleasure to have you as well. Reece, thank you very much as always. What have you got coming up on your obviously channels?
Fair few, but I'm just going to say, that your channel, aye?
That's the one.
There you go. Fair few things for me. A couple of pods this week. I'm actually going live on Twitch very soon, to be honest. But just an update if you're an Italian football fan. Napoli are now top of Serie A. 4 wins from 4. Koulibaly's just scored, make it 3-0 against Udinese. Roma's in 4th. But to be fair, if you're a Juventus fan, how's 18th hanging?
It's so funny.
Oh, that is hilarious. That is hilarious.
Couldn't beat the red and black
them recently.
Yeah, you couldn't beat the red and black. But yeah,
guys,
not much for me, mate. Not much for me except Twitch and a couple of pods this week. But I'm going live in about 25 minutes. I'm good. Maybe like an hour. Just reevaluate myself.
Yeah, but guys, thank you very much for watching. I know it's been a little bit of a different show tonight, but what to get Des on, get Forest insights into what's happening there. It's been very, very interesting. It's been very interesting doing the Derby thing and that Kane debate as well. I will clip the Kane debate, and I will actually put that out as a video as well. But thank you very much for watching. We will be back next week with more guests, more chat, and probably more controversy. We'll see you then. Take care. Bye-bye for now.
See you guys.